Hi. Today I'm going to be starting the 2 lectures on Platform 1. And I have before me the almost printed book, meaning we have it printed out, but it's not in the full book form yet. But this is what it's going to look like when it's an actual physical book, except 6x9. And I'm so excited. So this is the first time that I have the almost book in my hands. And the topic is becoming oneness, the essence of who we are. And I tell you, my preparation for this talk is separating and being angry for days. So, I'm perfectly positioned to talk to you about how to not be not oneness, or how to be not oneness, or how not to be oneness, or some... Perfect, yes. I'm in perfect shape. So I've been looking at myself. Now, as you will recall, in the assignments for Consciousness Bootcamp, you are supposed to read the book, right? Did you get that out there? You were supposed to read the book, meaning that I don't have to repeat everything in the book. I remember going to school, and the teacher would give a lecture. And sometimes the teacher was just repeating everything that was in the book, and I wondered why I was paying all this money to go to Cornell, or wherever it was that I was. And of course it was great for people who didn't read the book, which I also sometimes was. But the idea of the lecture is that it's supposed to enhance. So I'm saying you're supposed to read the book. That means I don't have to be responsible for repeating everything in the book, and that means I don't have to remember everything that's in the book, even though I wrote it. And this is going to be a 2-parter, of course, so which is what we also did with Section 1. So I'd like to start with why it is so darned hard to become oneness, to practice unity consciousness. And I've been looking at myself, and of course this is also in the book, but I want to look at some personal experiences that have to do with that. It's very easy to be in oneness consciousness when we do not feel threatened. I have experienced it. You go into this wonderful zone of Om. We're all together and it feels so great. Oh, I love you, you love me. Oh, Om, Om, And you can feel it, the divine consciousness. You feel the energy, the chi. Those of us who are attuned to energy have had that experience where you just feel bzzz, and you just feel elevated like you're in an altered state. And it's just great. And let's say you've had this wonderful experience with a friend or a partner, and you're leaving the Consciousness Bootcamp meeting place, and you get in the car, and the battery is dead because that idiot friend of yours left the lights on. And you're hungry, and you really want to get to Denny's really fast, and the only thing that you seem to have in your pocket is a candy bar called a health bar that's full of 20 grams of sugar, but it has something in it that it has nuts in it, so somebody can pretend it's healthy. And so now here you are, you're angry at your friend, you're anxious, you give yourself sugar, you're completely off to the races, and you're nuts. And there isn't any oneness, is there? Now, is there anybody who can honestly tell me that they cannot identify with this? There are no hands up. Thank you. All that tells me is that there are no liars in the room. I am struggling with my internet access, and the company that is responsible, to whom I am paying a tremendous amount of money because we have a T1 line and because we live in the country and this and that. I have been on the phone with them over and over and over, and of course it's all outsourced. So the person who's talking to me does not speak English without an accent. I can't understand what they're saying. They can't understand what I'm saying. An automated system has called me and told me that I need to call them with the information that they already have so that they can send out the technician that they have stopped sending because they don't see that there's a problem. They closed this trouble ticket twice on me in the last day and a half. This ticket has been closed while the internet is down. And I am not feeling in unity consciousness with the poor human being who's on the other side of the phone struggling to help me, probably desperately needs this job, and can't understand me either because I don't speak Hindi, do I? See, but I'm blaming them for not speaking English as, you know, as clearly as I do. And I'm not in unity consciousness. Now, is there anyone who can't identify with that story? Unless you're the person in India who's trying desperately to understand the person from Wyoming or Alabama who's speaking to them, then you're getting that story in reverse. Here's another one. Do you like this one? Let's say I'm married. And let's say that my husband has a living mother who's 80 going on 122. And she feels entitled to his attention because after all, didn't she raise him? Didn't she go through labor? Didn't she feed him? Look at all of the things that she did for him. And now it's time to ante up, buddy. You know, you got to take care of me. So, how might she do that? She might look, very distraught and need him to come and visit her more often. Or she might fall and break her hip and suddenly need to be transported to the hospital, or need to be visited in the hospital, or needed to come home from the hospital to someone's house. I have a right to his time, attention. I need him. Why did God put him on the earth if not to take care of my needs? What is she doing? Interfering with my day and my plans and my needs. Isn't she am I allowed to say bitch?
No.
Just say a B.
Isn't she a B? Isn't she? We have viewers across the seas. They may not recognize our terms. Yeah, our vernacular. Isn't she a selfish, self-centered, demanding person who's pulling on my husband? But that's the way she is, isn't it? Anybody not identify with that story? If it's not a mother, it's someone else. Kid. Don't mention kid. Okay. Do we have the idea? Well, I'm going to give you another example. Are we getting more and more sick as I'm speaking? Okay, here's another one. I want to live at a standard of living which we have committed to. We have 3 mortgages, we have 2 car payments, we have to support our dogs, whatever it is. We like to eat organic food that's very expensive. God, it's been years since I had a vacation. We need money. What do you mean you're working late again tonight, dear? How could you be working late again? Didn't we have a date tonight? Aren't you supposed to be spending time with me? Did you say something about having a deadline at work? Oh yeah, but what about me? Does anybody not identify with that? Practicing oneness. Are we kidding? I mean, are we kidding? Or, it's going to get worse. If it could get any worse, it's about to get worse. You aren't nice to me. You are suing me. You are parking in my parking space in front of my house. You yelled at me. You got my parking space at the mall and aggressively took it from me. Your son got the home run while mine was pitching. From the sublime to the ridiculous. Okay, you came at me with a knife and raped me. Oneness? Are you kidding? I don't like what you did to me. I've seen it over and over. People who actually think they are practicing oneness consciousness because they believe in it. They walk around talking about it. They teach it. They mouth the words. Saying, yeah, but not in this case. Does anybody not identify with that? What about, and this is even worse, you molested my daughter. You beat up my son. You raped my wife. You invaded my country. You flew your plane into my building. You gave me HIV and didn't even tell me that you already knew you had it. Now you tell me how fast you're going to work. You're going to practice oneness consciousness and be in the oneness with that person. Now, does anybody not identify with that? It's not easy. It's not easy. Everything in us tells us we are one, and everything in us tells us that we are not. And which voice are we going to listen to? What kind of spiritual discipline, what kind of practices do we need in order to support the voice that says we are one, when everything in us says, no, we are not. I am not one with him or them. The ones who gave my daughter drugs. Now, why do I say that everything in us tells us that we are one? Well, because we are one. Because by nature, we are one. If you watched the videos and read Instinct, Ego, Instinct, and Evolution, which you were also supposed to do before you get to this video, you saw the theory, at least, that we all started in the oneness and we fragmented and we became differentiated consciousness, and yet we are all essentially one. But okay, let's say you think, oh, that's a cool story, but I don't believe it. Not really. Well, now I'm going to ask you this. If you, and this is in the book, if you hurt someone, doesn't it make you feel sick? I mean, can you look at the face of the child that you are beating up and not feel ashamed? When you look at the face of the person you beat in sports and you see their pain, do you not feel pain yourself? When we betray one another, do we not feel pain? When someone walks into the house and is happy, do we not tend to feel happier? When we're surrounded by depressed people, don't we get kind of down? If someone's angry at us, don't we get angry? What does that look like? Does that look like we're connected? I mean, could it be that on some fundamental level we cannot separate from one another? I mean, we're talking about on an energetic plane. It's like we feel each other's energy and we are impacted. How many of us have justified our anger by, but you were angry. You came at me, you were angry. Of course I'm angry, because you were angry. Well, look at what we're saying. I mean, part of that is ego, and we're going to get to ego in a much clearer way around this issue later on in our school here in Consciousness Boot Camp. But it also is a reflection of the fact that we are each other. We feel one another's feelings. We are bound. Haven't we all had the experience of knowing who is calling? You know, you just had this flash, the phone rings and you say, oh, that's Christopher. I almost always know when Christopher's calling. How? I'm not looking at the phone. It's like a little voice says, that's Christopher. I can feel it through the phone line, you know, before I answer the phone, that it's Christopher. Other people have those experiences too. Or you say, gee, I was just thinking of you. And that person called. How do we do this? Because we are one. It's kind of an undeniable reality. And not only are we one, but we like it. We are like puppies who are all squinched up with each other, you know, with mom. That's why we go to football games, so we can be one with somebody. We all have these experiences, and we have them all the time. Then there's another level in which our oneness shows up and just hits us in the face, which is when we pollute the air, we breathe, we're breathing it. I can be a very wealthy industrialist, but when I'm at that factory, I'm breathing the same air as my poor workers. And my favorite story, which is in the book, a lot of this part is in the book, is that when I lived in Cleveland, the river burned. The river burned because it was so polluted. And the pollution started moving out to the suburbs where the people who owned those factories lived. And they couldn't get away from it. I mean, I love Los Angeles. It's the equal opportunity polluter. Or Mexico City. You know? Rich or poor, you're there, you're breathing. If somebody is smoking in a restaurant next to me, I'm going to breathe in that smoke. I can't get away from it. I can't get away from you. I can't get away, you can't get away from me. You can't get away from the impact of my behavior. I'm swimming in the pool and somebody else pees in it. Well, hey, there's piss in my pool. We have a swimming teacher here. We are one. We impact one another. I moved to Oregon in the 1990s, and you know, I would find these gorgeous, pristine streams, and I'd walk down, and there were tubes and refrigerators and all kinds of crap thrown in, and I thought, where do you go? How do you get away from it? The impact of human behavior on one another. You know, if the seafood, if the whales have plastic in their stomachs because of what we're doing, you know, how far out in the ocean can you go and still never escape? Our impact. If they cut down the trees in the Amazon, that changes our weather. We are one, whether we like it or not. On an emotional level, on an energetic level, on a interactional physical level, we are one. We are impacted by one another. I went to Jamaica and the West Indies in the 70s, and I was in Kingston, and there was a garbage strike. Need I tell you what it was like to be in the middle of a garbage strike in the Caribbean in the summer? I was impacted by the working conditions that those people were struggling with. Now, I know that there are tourists who attempt to find little enclaves of America wherever they go. You know, they'll go to the hotel where absolutely everything is made in the USA, which actually means it was made in China anyway, but that, you know, that they have created an environment which is controlled. But there's always something that intervenes. Or if you dare to leave the enclave because you want to go out and take a taxi and go to see some tourist attraction, you're going to be right in the middle of whatever everybody in that universe is going through. Whether if they're in the third world and they're in poverty, you're there. So we are living in one world, guys, and we cannot do anything about that. So reality says we are one, whether we like it or not. And what's worse is if I gobble up all the resources for me, which is what I want to do, if I'm the one who has all the warm clothes, then all those poor suckers around me are going to freeze and are going to get sick, and I might catch it. The nerve! How dare those people bring illness into my life? And if my pollution has something to do with their unclean water and they get sick, darn, where can I go? Reminds me of the Middle Ages when the plagues came on and the wealthy people took themselves to the country to try to get away from the death. You know, our world becomes more and more one. So what I'm saying, guys, is we have no choice. We have no choice. All those examples that I gave in the beginning about how difficult it is to practice oneness, that doesn't take away from the fact that we have to, whether we like it or not. If I get mad at you because you're taking care of your mother instead of me, then you're going to resent me, and you're going to do even less for me than you would have if I was being sweet and you felt guilty. You felt so guilty towards me that after you took care of your mother, you brought me flowers. Not that I recommend using guilt, but what I'm saying is, the fact of the matter is that my reactions to you and your needs are going to impact my life. What are we going to do? Now, I've talked about some of the challenges to practicing oneness, and I haven't even gotten into the habits yet. I've given you situations, and I want to get into more depth about what these really mean. But I would like to make this comment first, that all of this has to do with the lack of oneness. Every reaction that I've described has to do with the fact that we begin with a concept of that we are not one. We all begin with ego, meaning it is I am cold, I have needs, I need to win, I've got to look better, me, 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 me. So it is the fact that we are dominated by ego, which we have already understood with great compassion from Ego, Instinct, and Evolution, and from hopefully the beginning of our book, the section 1, where we talk about our pain and how we try to, alter our feelings. So we are in an ego-based brain universe right here, that our first instinct is to take care of ourselves and see things from the I perspective. And so every one of these examples that I gave about, am I going to practice oneness with a guy who just raped my wife, or who, ran over my daughter, or who's invaded my nation, or all of those things. When I look at those questions, they are problematic and in fact almost impossible to overcome because I have started with me. So the very fact that we are dominated by the immature ego is the cause of the fact that I can't practice oneness. Because I start with me. If I started with the entire being, for example, the whole body, the body is going to slough off a cell or sacrifice a cell in order to save itself. But if I start from the perspective of the cell, it might say, no, my time has not come. I haven't finished. I'm not done. Do you see what I mean? Whose perspective are we starting with? Well, of course, we're starting with that cell. Whereas the body has to sacrifice cells every day. Use them up. When we enjoy the benefits of the Panama Canal or some tunnel or bridge, we're not thinking about how many people died creating these great wonders of human engineering. We never think about that, or rarely think about that. Because what we see is the result, which we then, of course, enjoy. When we send out our healthy cells to kill our cancer cells, we're not thinking from the perspective of that healthy cell what it's going to go through. It's like, no, don't send me in there. So what we're going to be doing in the course of Consciousness Boot Camp and reading through the Living with Reality book and practicing every day is we are going to shift our focus from the I to the we. But in this platform, Platform 1, we don't get there. We're just at the beginning. We're still starting with, there's you and me, and what are we going to do? How are we going to start practicing unity consciousness? And so we are still in the ego, and that makes it very tough. But what we can do is become more conscious. So let's say my husband has gone off because his 80-year-old going on 122-year-old mother is, broke her hip. If both of us are capable of being vertical, as we talked about in the last videos, checking in with Source, we might have a moment of neutrality to say, well, let's see. Is it right for you to go take care of your mother today? Or are you doing it because you're a neurotic little boy who feels guilty towards his mother and can't stand seeing her suffer because she made you feel like crap about yourself and you've been dominated by her ever since, in which case you shouldn't go. Now that's different, isn't it? That is different. But that assumes that you have people who are capable of consciousness, who are actually capable, willing, and able to examine what is reality. Just because grandma calls and says, I'm not feeling well today, but she probably wouldn't say that. She'd say, I'm fine. Or whatever she does to make you, to trigger that little guilt that's going to get your ass out the door. So she's playing a number. Do you have any awareness at that moment that she's playing a number? Or are you responding from that little ego baby that you were when we did Ego, Instinct, and Evolution, that learned that the only way to survive in that family is to pander to mom? And so you're out the door without even thinking about it. And here I am saying, yeah, but you're supposed to take care of me. So now you can justifiably say, well, I'm being torn between my mother and my wife. Rather than I am being dominated by my ego's reaction to my mother's ego that I got involved in when I was 6 months old, which I learned in Ego, Instinct, and Evolution. And she's making me feel anxious, and the only way that I know to deal with that feeling is to placate her, because that will deal with my anxiety. Even though the reality is that grandma ought to be in a nursing home. But see, putting grandma in a nursing home isn't going to make me feel better. It's going to make me feel more guilty. So I'm not going to deal with the reality that grandma should be in a nursing home because she has a tendency to fall and she needs people watching her. Or because I have other responsibilities that I have to take care of, and if I'm taking care of grandma, I'm not taking care of those responsibilities. I'm not dealing with reality, as we talked about in section 1. I am changing my feeling state by utilizing the ego-based reactions, and then I create an ego-based reaction in my partner, my wife, who's sitting there saying, yes, but what about me? And so everybody's in ego and nobody's practicing oneness. Whereas the wife could say, I understand what's happening, but don't you remember that your mother has been pulling this on you for years? And don't you think it's time for you to go to the stream and get some healing? So that you stop doing this knee-jerk reaction? So you see what I'm saying is that when we start with the I, and when we are still dupes of our own ego reactivity, we are not able to practice oneness, and what happens between people is resentment, fragmentation, and competition. But there is no competition for you if we are conscious. The very existence of competition is based on unconsciousness. Grandma has needs, you have needs, I have needs, our children have needs. The Consciousness Boot Camp has needs. You know, my job has needs. Everybody seems to have needs, and they can all be competing. Is that real? For those of you who can't hear it, there are donkeys who are making very interesting sounds as I'm asking these questions. They're laughing at us.
In the oneness.
So that the very existence of competition is based on a lack of consciousness, that there is a greater good, there is a highest good of all, which, by the way, we will get into in Platform 4. But now I want to introduce that idea, because as we're going towards the seemingly impossible becoming oneness platform, let's have this realization that competitiveness is trained. It is both instinctive, but it is also cultivated. It's cultivated in our families. You have 5 children, 2 children, 1 children, mom, dad, or whoever, grandma, grandpa, job, whatever is out there. And you come into this world where nobody teaches you anything about the highest good of all, and you get it. You've got to get yours. As we've said before, we don't typically train our children to think in terms of oneness consciousness, so their little infantile egos are running amok, or at best we're hiding them because we've told our children, as we talk about ego, instinct, and evolution, don't act selfish. don't be selfish. We tell them don't be selfish. What we really mean is don't act selfish, because we don't want anyone else to think that our children are selfish, because that would make us look like bad parents, which is completely selfish. But anyway, hide your ego. But we haven't really trained children to think differently. So they grow up in a world where they see competition every day. Competition among family members for love and affection, for material things. And they see competition between our family and the families next door. It's the them-us syndrome. This is one of the death knells to oneness consciousness. Them and us. He, she, they. And we're trained to this. It's like, oh, yeah. Did you see what the neighbors did to the hedges between our houses? Did you hear what so-and-so said? Did you see what my brother's new wife did to my mother at the wedding? How many of us haven't been poisoned by millions and millions and millions and millions of he, theys, and she's that are all based on a lack of oneness, that are based on they are different, they are worse, they are bad. Now, I could have been part of the wealthy elite looking down on the scumbags, but I wasn't born into that. I was born into the scumbags, being looked down upon by the wealthy elite. But what I want to say is, being poor is not in and of itself a virtue, because it doesn't make me more in the oneness. I don't feel my oneness with my boss. I'm resentful. They cut my pay, with nostrils flaring. She asked me to work overtime. And maybe she did. Maybe they did. I'm not even saying it was a good thing. But you see what I'm saying? It's the immediate reaction is I, they, she, me. Opposition, opposition, opposition. So if you happen to be poorer or a worker, and most people work for companies where, oh my God, my profit is going to be diminished if I give you this raise. How many of us don't count, don't actually look at issues like that? Oh, if I pay so-and-so more this, I'm going to have less for me. Or should I get, let's say we've finally reached the point that we can afford to have a housekeeper. Would I pay her at the same rate that I expect people to pay me for my work? Hell no. Oneness only goes so far, guys. Well, obviously she doesn't need as much as I do. She speaks Spanish. I mean, don't we know that that in and of itself is enough of a reason why she doesn't need what I need? She should be happy. She has this much. What would she have in Mexico? I mean, look at all the stuff we do. We are in a competitive world, and part of it is reality. Part of it is reality. If there's one sweater and we're both cold, what do? This is reality. These are the realities I'm talking about. But part of it is just the way we think. Maybe we should have made a blanket instead of made a sweater, and we could both bundle up. Maybe we didn't think that way to start with. What do we need? What does our world need? Maybe? Is there really a maybe about this? I still do this. I still feel the conflict between buying from a retailer who has to pay a sales staff to be there and buying online and getting a cheaper price. Buying something that's made by someone who's getting paid, I got this great deal on these shoes. Do I want to know how much money the workers who made that shoe actually made? Of course not, because I need my money. I don't have enough money as it is to pay my bills. Where did oneness consciousness go? So the world creates this constant challenge for our consciousness. Life creates these constant challenges for our consciousness. And at this stage of our awareness, what is the best we can do to develop new habits of thinking? So I have a reaction in the beginning. So my first reaction is, that's cheaper, I'll buy it there. But maybe my second reaction is, well, let me check in with higher consciousness. Should I buy it here or should I buy it there? Maybe my consciousness gives me a different moment after my first reaction is, oh, your mother called again. To say, well, let me check in with you. Let's connect and see, what does she really need us? What are her needs? How could they best be met? That's a habit. To think in that way is a habit. It is not spontaneous, is it? And there's one more thing I want to say about oneness before I go on and talk about the first two habits today. I'll talk about the other 4 habits next time. Is coming back to how desperately we need to feel one. Everything I've said so far, I think, will show you how difficult it is to practice oneness in real life. What is going to make us do it? First, I've talked about the reality that we are one. Our ecology has been an incredible teacher. The fact that a flu can travel from Hong Kong to the US and make my child sick has been an incredible teacher. HIV has been an incredible teacher. The fact that prices on the world market go like this and all of a sudden I have no retirement anymore has been an incredible teacher. All of these things in our world have taught us. What we don't seem to have been able to have learned through the pain on the emotional level, on the spiritual plane, the feeling of emptiness we have. But I want to talk about that emotional pain and that feeling of emptiness. We are one, and when we don't feel the oneness, we feel separate and alone and in pain. And I talked about this in section 1. The second part is section 1, which is the pain of disconnection from ourselves and one another. We need it. We need to feel love and connection. I cannot feel love for you when I feel guilty about the way I'm treating you. Isn't that interesting? I may think I feel love when I'm feeling guilty, but I'm not. All I'm feeling is guilt. In fact, I'm angry at you for making me feel guilty for what I've just done to you. You made me do it. What could I say? I had to yell at you. You were being bad. Mojo is protecting someone. So, I get this. Do you get this? That I can't feel love for someone I feel guilty towards at the same time. Because what I'm really feeling is my shame about me. And when I'm feeling shame about me, I'm not feeling anything about you. You barely even exist. You're just an idea in my mind. I'm so busy feeling ashamed of myself that I'm not emotionally available. I cannot feel love for you if I have not made amends to you. That's in Platform 7, how we make amends. Because that guilt will sit there between us like a wall. Yet how many of us make amends or even know how to make amends properly? That becomes a habit. Or want to make amends. God forbid we should make amends because we would have had to admit we had done something wrong, as though that was the worst thing in the world, was to admit we had done something wrong. I can't feel a lot of love when you feel angry. At me. I can't feel love for you when you feel angry at someone else. Now, we bond with people over anger, and I will talk about this in Platform 2 about differentiation and merging. But we don't love them. We don't feel love. If you are angry at your boss and you come home and you bitch and bitch and bitch and bitch, I may say, oh yeah, this is going to get us really well bonded because I'm just going to agree with everything you say. But am I feeling love or am I feeling anger? And after a while it's like, will he stop complaining? Will he please stop complaining? I can't stand it. There's no love there. There's no unity. There's no oneness consciousness. Isn't that amazing? What I need is a clear field, a clear energy space. And that's what you need. I need to feel love from you and I need to love you. And if you aren't going to love me, I'm going to have to start. Somebody has to start. Somebody has to start with love. Somebody has to start with compassion. Somebody has to break the impasse between people. And that's just as true on the macro level as it is on the micro level. Okay, so you are a philandering bastard. All right already. Now what? Am I going to have compassion for you? Or am I going to skewer you like a shish kebab? And then expect you to love me in return. Because your love for me is now going to make up for all the hurt that you gave me. We are going to learn how to do this, guys. We're going to learn how to break the impasse between people. And it starts with us. Because we need it. Because I don't want to be alone in this world, do you? Now I'm supposed to remember what's in habit 1, but I don't. I think it's competition, but I'll tell you in a minute. I actually was going to take out the table of contents. Here it is. Negative habit 1 is we experience ourselves as separate and are dominated by the ego's instinct and training to protect ourselves. We bond with those we think will protect us and fragment from the others. Now, that's what I was talking about before. We start from a universe where we are dominated by ego. And because of our instinct and our training to protect ourselves, we bond with those who we think will protect us and fragment from the others. So we bond with our families against others, or we bond with our friends against others, or we bond with members of our nation against others. We bond with our class consciousness, against others. We bond with our race against others, don't we? Or we try to pretend we don't, but we do. Okay, now the positive habit that we want to start replacing this with is, we experience ourselves as one. As such, there is no them and us. Everyone is real, of equal value, and equally connected to me. Darn! Okay. okay, I can speak in highfalutin language here and say, okay, I'm of the Caucasian race. And I know from being a good person that people of other races are equal to me. That's until I see their habits and they're putting the laundry out, at the window, or are peeing into the backyard, or have chickens.
That crow at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right, roosters. And that's weird. How can those people be like that? What's wrong with them? Now they're sitting there looking at me saying, God, white bread. What's wrong with that girl? Why doesn't she have any chickens? I mean, doesn't she know that the food is better? Or does she, what does she think that chickens grow in cellophane? Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's an awful lot of them, us, and it's very hard, even though theoretically I'm way beyond racism. Way, way, way. Aren't you? Way beyond racism. Until my property values go down. So, but this is even worse when it comes to my husband's mother. Listen to what this maniac who wrote this book said. We experience ourselves as one. Experience ourselves as one? As such, there is no them and us? You mean she isn't them and I am not us? Everyone is real, of equal value and equally connected to me. Do you mean to tell me that my mother-in-law is as connected to me as my husband? Are you gagging now? Do you mean that that insane person who is called my boss is just as connected to me as my lovely child? What are you, crazy? What do you mean that terrorist is as connected to me as my best girlfriend? Now we're all going to see, when I read this out loud, doesn't everyone say, oh yes, yes, becoming oneness, habit one, yes. There is no them or us, yes. Everyone is real, of equal value and equally connected to me. Oh yes, I'll drink to that.
Where's the waiter?
Yeah.
Don't when you go outside the house and interact with anyone.
That's exactly. As Chris just said, and I'll repeat this for anyone who didn't hear that, just don't let me go out the house and interact with anyone. It is mind cringing to try to think that everybody in the world is equally connected. To me. And yet we are, because if you don't get your education or you don't get the proper medication if you're mentally ill, or the proper support, or you don't get enough love, you might kill my daughter. And that's the truth. That's why we're afraid of each other, because we are so darn connected. So, cringing though it may feel, we have got to make a decision to at least make an effort to think differently. And that means, and I asked myself this last night, because as I said, I've gone through extreme challenges on the Becoming Oneness platform, One Habit One, lately. Who did I bond with today? Who was us? Who did I feel ooh goo goo gaga with? My best friends, the ones who treat me right. Who did I make less important, less valuable, or worthy? Who were they? Oh, well, think about it, guys. Can you come up with 100, a dozen? Just in every day? The person on the grocery line in front of me who has food stamps when I'm in a hurry and they're disorganized in their purse and they can't find them and the cashier is sitting there going like this. Or the person who's so poor they're driving a clunker that they can't steer and it's coming down the road right in front of me at 5 miles an hour. Or shouldn't be driving because they're too old. Were they less important, less valuable, or worthy than me? You darn straight they were. Or my mother-in-law. Did I see everyone in this situation as equally real, equally connected to me? No, they are not real. I am real. My pain is real. His pain is not real. Can I bear to look at the homeless person and think that their pain is real? No way. I couldn't live. Could I live through a single day if I really could let myself feel what I actually do feel, which is that everybody's real and their pain is real? Did I at least ask the question, what can be done for the common good? Oh, wow. Did I ask that question? I have to give myself credit. Maybe in 1 out of 10 situations I ask the question. Can I reconsider any of my decisions, thoughts, and behaviors based on this inventory? Now, this is what I love. We're only at platform 1. Nobody's asking me to be a hero. The book is saying to me, can at least I think about this? Can I reconsider my options? Can I look at my mother-in-law and say, well, she really did break her hip. Maybe she does need help. Maybe he really should go. Maybe I should go over. Should I make amends? Can I do something different? And all I say here is we may not always be able to come up with new and different solutions because we cannot create a new universe by ourselves. But we can start thinking differently. Wow. Take a breath. Becoming oneness, I've already started. I've already started by asking the question, by really examining them and us. Why am I separating from all these people? How am I feeling threatened by them? Why do I need to make them unreal? Do they make me unreal? Probably. What can I start to do? I love that. No big deal, right? We're just getting started. Negative habit 2. We fear domination and respond by trying to dominate. Well, isn't that common sense? I mean, if someone's trying to dominate me, am I not supposed to try to dominate them back? I mean, what are you asking here? Well, here's positive habit 2. We realize that all of us feel powerless and fear our needs won't be met. We let go of trying to control each other as we learn to practice cooperation instead. Now I'm going to bring this book over here, because this is heavy. This is heavy. We realize that we all feel powerless. Now, isn't that interesting? Let's go back to Grandma. Has Grandma not been trying to dominate my husband all his life? Of course she has. Now, why is she doing that? Because she feels powerless. She seems to need this. She thinks she needs it at the very least. That person who is trying to get me to work for less, which happens all the time. Why don't you give me a break, Beth? Why are they doing that? Either because they really don't have the resources, or they want to use their resources on something else. And they want me to take care of them. They seem to feel powerless. Now, they feel powerless because they don't have the resources, or they're powerless over their spending and their emotional habits that have created in them the need to spend this money on other things. Or they're afraid to stand up to their wife who has just gone out and bought a new wardrobe again, because she feels so powerless that the only way that she feels better is to buy herself new clothes. Now, I feel like this person is trying to dominate me. They're trying to get me to do something that I don't want to do. But maybe it's because they feel powerless too. Maybe they're afraid that I'm trying to dominate them. Maybe they think I'm putting something over on them. They're trying to get me to do something I don't want. And I'm trying to get them to do something that they don't want to do. Clash. Now, we're always trying to control each other. Aren't we? Is there anybody here who can honestly say that they're not trying to control the people around them? Life is so unmanageable. And people are messy. And they do hurtful things. To me. Or to each other. Well, if I don't dominate them, what am I going to do? Now, I'm not going to get into how we try to dominate life. I talked about that a little bit before in the section 1, part 2 of section 1. But let's look at the realities of how we are impacted by each other's behavior and why we would want to dominate. If my child screams constantly, I will not sleep. If I don't sleep, I'm too tired to go to work. If I'm too tired to go to work, I don't bring home the money. If I don't bring home the money, we will be evicted. How am I going to not want to try to dominate that child? I mean, let's get real about this oneness consciousness. How am I going to give up domination when we may get evicted? Here I talk about being married to a woman with a shopping addiction. How am I not going to want to cut up her credit cards? How am I going to not want to stop you from eating sugar when I know it makes you anxious and crazy? How am I not going to want to get you to be more loving and affectionate? We feel helpless, guys. We feel helpless 90% of our lives, don't we? I don't know what the other 10% is, but I'm giving us giving us the benefit of the doubt that maybe there are moments when we don't feel powerless. We started feeling powerless when we were infants. Well, guess what? We were. We still feel powerless, and guess what? We are. If the garbage collectors in Kingston, Jamaica decided to go on strike, I was going to have a mass of flying insects everywhere and stinking garbage, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was powerless. If my husband is unconscious and he goes out to take care of his mother without discussing it with me, I am powerless. His unconsciousness makes me powerless. I have no say. I can't even reason with him. When our mothers or fathers or caretakers were negligent or brutal We were powerless. We tried to create ways of responding that to dominate them. So, for instance, we may have learned that guilt is a way of dominating them. Or if we're strong, force is a way of dominating. The strength of our will can be a way of dominating. Our superior intellect can be a way of dominating. How? Oh yeah, we can babble our way through. The other person gets so confused that they completely lose their own perspective and say, well, you must be right because you use big words. That's reality. We are powerless, but so is everybody else. See, if we really get into oneness consciousness, we begin to realize that everything that I'm saying about me is equally true for you. Now, there's the beauty. There's when we get over the them, us, we begin to realize that everybody is just like us, so they feel the way we do. So we go back to habit 1, and we say, they all feel just the way I do. I am not unique. There is no exception to the rule. Human beings are basically the same. If you have a customer who's trying to cheat you, that customer probably feels like they're being cheated by you or have been cheated by others or feel cheated by life. Something is going on with them. Why don't we ask? Why don't we go into the inquiry? Gee, I wonder what's really going on with them. I wonder why they are behaving that way. That's because we start with the assumption that we are one, that we are actually the same. If we do that, then we start having new questions. Then one more time, domination, just like competition. Competition evaporates when we actually realize that we are one and we need to cooperate to help our world out. And maybe we should make blankets instead of sweaters if we're so short on wool. Or maybe we should have more sheep instead of more bombs. Imagine that. Oh, we couldn't do that because there's them and us. You know, we have to protect ourselves. I mean, look at the waste our world goes through every day because we're so afraid of each other that we can't make enough wool to have enough sweaters to keep ourselves warm. So that we have to turn up the thermostat, which means that we use more oil, which means that we're polluting the earth. All of that, right? So it's the same thing with domination. When we start understanding that we are each other, then we also realize that the people who we think are trying to dominate us feel we're trying to dominate them. Of course, they're hallucinating. We're just totally fair. We are not trying to control anybody. We're just trying to get a fair shake. And there's so many ways to dominate. Manipulation is one of our favorites. We know exactly when we get to know people. You know why we're safer with people we know? Because we know what buttons to push. We know how to manipulate them. You meet a perfect stranger, you have no idea what that territory is. You don't know how to manipulate them. Tell me more about so-and-so. Let me get to know you. And you know, and I feel sorry for boys. I really do. Because they have bullies to deal with more than girls, although in today's world and in certain cultures, there's a lot of bullying going on there, but it used to be, in my day, back in the Stone Age, that boys had to face getting beaten up. And their fathers say, yeah, get tough. Get tough. Learn how to fight back, dominate. How to dominate back. Very aggressive men teaching their very sensitive young boys that they have to get tough so that they can dominate, and shame them for not already being that way at the age of 3. Well, did you fight back? And the business world, fight, 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 fight. Fight, fight, fight. You know, it's a joke. We women used to be considered the nurturers of the planet, right? Do you remember those days? And now we are the co-earners, if not the higher earners in the current economy. So we're going to go in there and we are going to reclaim our power as women by acting like men and fighting one another and forgetting being the nurturers of the planet. Well, we don't like that either, do we? I'm not saying we don't have to fight, and fighting is an important thing, and I'll talk about that later. We have to fight for the right thing. But it's not about trying to dominate each other. It's trying to stop that which is harmful. That is different. stopping that which is harmful is not domination. Domination means I want to control you and get something over on you. Not that I want to stop you from being destructive to yourself and others. The energy behind it is different. I see you're hurting me. I see you're hurting our children. I see you hurting our society. I see you hurting yourself. I want to support you to stop that. That's not control. That is not domination. Now, the person who's being confronted may say, you're trying to control me. No, I'm trying to support you to control yourself. To get to the point that, and beyond that, I want to support you to control yourself by healing so you don't feel dominated by that aspect of you that's causing you to behave that way. I am not telling you that you need to stop flirting with other women because I need to control you, but because flirting with other women comes from a pain inside you that you need to heal to be well in order to be available to yourself, to me, and to everyone. That's different, isn't it? So, well, look what's happening to the domination conversation. What seemed impossible a few minutes ago is becoming possible. You mean we can change our perspective and start looking at what is real, what is really happening with people, and what their real needs are. Okay, talk to me. You say you want me to do this job for you for less money. Well, now let's talk about this. Am I really the right landscaper for you? Maybe there's somebody around the corner who needs your business, who's charging what you can afford to pay, and they need the work. Maybe you need to stop drinking so you can afford to pay me. Maybe you don't need landscaping at all. Maybe you need to forget about it. You know, you're too in your ego and you're trying to impress the neighbors. Maybe you need to learn how to garden. Conversation, inquiry. Let's find out what's really going on with people. Wow, the domination conversation is over. But how can we do that if our first reaction is, they're trying to dominate me? Ooh, I can tell. Wow, go into a state of relaxation and inquiry. Let's find out how to resolve these issues. Can we? Well, my God, we need conscious people for that. I think I should enroll everyone in Consciousness Boot Camp. When we get it that we are one, everything changes. Because we start asking different questions. And then when we start asking different questions, we get different answers. Amazing. Like we're asking these questions instead of it being an ego battle of, he's trying to chisel me out of the fee. I know those landscapers, they're all overpriced. Does that client say to you, the landscaper, well, give me an idea of what kind of expenses you're facing? You know, wow, you must have really been impacted when the price of, fuel for your machines went up. Gosh, when is the last time you gave your workers a raise? I mean, would you drop dead with shock if your client said that to you? How much money do you really need to be charging for this job? Imagine a world based on oneness where we all realize that we were one, we all have the same kind of needs. Everybody, we're all connected. Gee, I want you to feel good about this job. I want you to feel good about what I'm paying you. I know that you're going to want to come and do my job if you feel good about you being compensated properly for what you're doing. Maybe I should take into consideration the fact that you're breaking your back and that you need to work less, fewer hours. Maybe you can't work 12 bazillion hours a day. And that you need to get paid more so you can maintain yourself without overworking. Because you and I are one. And I care about how you feel. And I am impacted by how you feel. And this would be, and when I go into the local restaurant and I see you, and we have a relationship of oneness and trust, you're going to be happy to see me, and I'm going to feel not ashamed, but happy to see you. Because if I cheat you, I'm going to feel ashamed. Remember I said I can't feel love for somebody if I feel guilt? Well, your client isn't going to love you for giving them a deal. Only their egos will love you. They'll feel guilty. They're not going to want to see you. They're not going to want to know that you broke your back and that you're in bed because of their job, because you overworked. Are you beginning to get what I'm saying? I know it's like a lot of strands coming together. Start with oneness, and all of a sudden, everything starts to look different. The world looks different. Relax into the knowledge that everybody who's competing with you, who's trying to dominate you, is no different from you. They are not more powerful than you. There is no one more powerful than you. And you are no more powerful than anyone else. Because when you've had 5 glasses of water and you haven't hit the bathroom, you've got to pee, whoever you are. And if you're royalty, you're walking around with a little bag. You know what I mean? And we're all dependent on each other's love. And we're all scared. And we're all either too young to know anything or too old to be able to follow through. I'm either too young to know that I have to pick that up, or I'm too old to bend. Or I'm somewhere in between, and when I'm old enough to know and young enough to bend, everybody wants me to do it for them. I mean, we're all in trouble, aren't we? Life isn't easy. If we actually thought that we were one and we started acting like that, then everyone would be considering everybody's needs, and there would be no domination, and the whole conversation would be gone. When we dominate, we have a sense of false power. But that false power creates separation. Just like when I'm angry, I feel separate from you because I feel not only the separation that is caused by the anger, I feel the separation that caused the anger. And my anger makes me feel separate and alone. And that makes me need to dominate you more. The more I dominate, the more I need to dominate. Oh my God, think about what it was like to be a slave owner. Surrounded by people who you're dominating. The Haitian Revolution, back in 17 something or other, where the slaves rebelled against the slave owners, slit their throats. One day, they're combing your hair. Gee, I wonder why they did that. What's wrong with those slaves? People are animals. It's not safe to live in a world where we hurt each other. It's not safe to live in a world where we dominate in order to feel safe. The only way to feel safe is to stop dominating and to trust that somehow or other we can co-create a world where we're not the only ones. We've got to stop being hypervigilant in order to feel safe. Hypervigilance makes us feel unsafe. What about the guy who's living in a family, everybody loves him, but he's so hypervigilant from his childhood that he can't trust anybody? He's going to feel unsafe in a bubble bath. So let's look at the questions around habit 2. where we give up domination and begin to understand that everybody feels powerless and start to inquire into each other's needs. Did I feel powerless today, and how did I respond? Well, ask yourself that right now. Think about yesterday if it's too early in the morning. Did I feel powerless, and how did I respond? Did I try to control life for others? Did I get caught up in my own fear of being dominated? You're darn straight I did. There's Grandma asking my husband to go take care of her. Did I acknowledge that others have the same fear? Well, if I had to. Isn't she looking at me as that rotten daughter-in-law? My daughter-in-law, my son used to be so devoted until he met her. Did I try to bully? Did I try to placate? Did I try to manipulate? Did I try all three? Did I listen to all sides and consider everyone's needs? Do I have to? Did I practice cooperation rather than domination? Okay. As I watch myself falling on my face on a regular basis, I'm reading from the book, I can laugh at myself, which is perhaps the key to practicing this habit, just as it is the key to practicing them all. Can we all laugh? Yes. Come back for the next talk, and I will talk about the rest of Platform 1. But in the meantime, I want you to be paying attention to the tendencies to separate, get them and us, and the tendencies to dominate. Ask yourselves the questions in this book. Laugh at yourself on a regular basis. And remember that ultimately we are one and we just can't get away with it. And not only that, it just feels good. Let's try to get oneness consciousness out of the sky and down to the earth.